Today we're talking about values and variables in Perl, the values we can work with and where we can store them. In Perl, there are 8 types of scalar data. Undef is the undefined value, the value for where there just isn't a value, analogous to null in C or Java. In Perl though, it's rare to actually see undef used. We only usually see it with the defined predicate. The integer numeric value, or IV, is a native, signed, nowadays 64-bit integer. It works mostly as you'd expect. You can use binary, or octal, or decimal, or hexadecimal literals, and you can use underscores to group digits and long numbers. All the arithmetic operations, bitwise operations, and comparison operations you'd expect are defined. The real numeric value, or NV, is an IEEE 754 double precision floating point number. As with IV, literals and operations on a double work pretty much as you'd expect. Infinity and not a number are also handled sensibly, though there are some quirks about how we can refer to them. The string value, PV, is very different to an array of characters in C. There are some quirks about how we can use them and refer to them, which we'll talk about in another video. These are the 4 most common types you'll come across. There are some quirkier and more fun types though. Regular expressions are just values, and we can store and use them in other operations. We'll talk in more length about using regular expressions in Perl in another video. References to other variables, similar to pointer types in C, give us a mechanism for constructing complex values and data structures. Subroutines in Perl are also first-class citizens which we can pass around or hold in other variables. These closure values are outside the scope of this course. And I/O operations, and file handles and formats, which we talk about more in another video. These are all scalar values, or SVs, and we can use variables to hold these values. When we talk about variables in Perl, we need a sigil to indicate the type of that value. The $ sigil tells us that we have a scalar value, somewhat like the Bourne shell. There are also well-defined coercion and conversion rules that transform a value from one type to another as needed. For example, strings that contain only numbers or number-like values are roughly interchangeable with numbers, though it's strongly recommended you don't mix them. To talk about collections of scalar values, we have 2 more types. AV, the array value, is an ordered list of elements. Perl's arrays are very flexible, allowing us to hold many different types of scalar values. We use the @sigil and initialize arrays with parentheses and a comma-separated list of values. We would use square brackets to get an array ref. We also use square brackets to retrieve a value. We use the $ sigil for one value or an @sigil for a slice of many. In another video, we'll talk more about working with lists of values, how we can treat them as stacks or queues, and easily iterate over, transform, or filter values. HV, the hash value, is an associative array or hash table. It maps a string key to an associated value, not preserving key order. We initialize them from a comma-separated list of key-value pairs, separated by a fat comma, and we would use, again, parentheses to produce a hash, or curly braces to produce a hash ref, and we use the % sigil to denote a hash. We can then use curly braces to pick a value out. Hashes are an extremely powerful construct in Perl, and we look at them in more depth in another video. And for more in-depth coverage of these topics, check out the Perl documentation collection.